There are places on Earth where evolution seems to have slowed, where ancient forms still remain unchanged, watching from the edges of forgotten wetlands. In the swamps of central tropical Africa, among floating vegetation and black water channels, stands a bird that does not look entirely real, nearly motionless, towering above the reeds, its eyes fixed forward with unnatural intensity, its beak shaped less like that of a bird and more like a tool carved for violence. The shoebill, a predator so strange in appearance that early explorers struggled to classify it. Some compared it to storks, others to pelicans. But nothing about the shoebill feels familiar. Not the silence, not the stillness, and certainly not the stare. Because unlike most birds, the shoebill is not built for speed. It is built for patience, for stillness, for timing. And in many ways, that is exactly what makes it dangerous. The wetlands it inhabits are among the most difficult ecosystems in Africa. Dense papyrus swamps stretching across parts of South Sudan, Uganda, Zambia, and the vast marshes surrounding the White Nile. A world suspended between land and water, unstable, oxygen poor, nearly impossible for large predators to navigate efficiently. But the shoebill was never designed to chase. It was designed to wait. And inside ecosystems like these, waiting becomes a form of power. At first glance, the shoebill appears almost motionless, a bird standing alone in shallow water, its grey-blue feathers blending into mist and swamp vegetation, its enormous body strangely rigid. But this stillness is deceptive, because the shoebill is not resting. It is calculating. Every movement in the water matters. Ripples, pressure changes, tiny disturbances beneath floating plants. The wetlands are often murky, visibility collapsing beneath the surface. So the shoebill relies on timing more than sight alone. And here, timing determines everything. Its prey is unusually difficult to capture. Lungfish, catfish, juvenile crocodiles, large amphibians hidden beneath dense aquatic vegetation. Animals capable of disappearing instantly into mud and darkness. Which is why the shoebill evolved one of the most specialized hunting strategies among birds. It does not stalk continuously. It freezes, sometimes for astonishing lengths of time, minutes, occasionally longer. Its body conserving energy while remaining almost perfectly still. And then, without warning, the swamp erupts. The bird launches forward with explosive force, its massive beak crashing into water and vegetation simultaneously. A strike so violent that surrounding plants are often torn apart on impact. And what rises from the water is not always immediately recognizable, because the shoebill hunts in a world where prey is rarely seen clearly, only detected at the exact moment.
The strike is chaotic. Mud, roots, water, struggling flesh, everything compressed into a single violent moment. And then silence returns, as if nothing happened at all. But the beak itself may be the most unsettling adaptation. Enormous, hooked at the tip, edges sharp enough to decapitate prey, capable of crushing slippery animals that are difficult to restrain. Its shape resembles a wooden shoe, which gave the shoebill its name. But functionally, the structure behaves less like a beak and more like a clamp. A precision tool evolved for gripping powerful aquatic prey inside unstable terrain. And perhaps most disturbing is how little wasted movement the shoebill uses. No elaborate chase, no dramatic pursuit, only sudden force emerging from absolute stillness. An ambush predator disguised as a bird. And the deeper scientists studied the shoebill, the stranger it became. Most large birds rely heavily on social behavior, flocking, cooperative nesting colonies, migratory coordination. But shoebills are overwhelmingly solitary. Adults often remain isolated across enormous territories within the swamp. Encounters are rare, communication minimal, even vocalizations are uncommon. For long periods, a wetland containing a shoebill can feel almost empty. Until suddenly, the bird reveals itself from the reeds. Not arriving, not landing, simply appearing as if it had been watching the entire time. This isolation likely reflects the pressure of the environment itself. Inside swamp ecosystems, food is unevenly distributed. Oxygen levels fluctuate. Water channels shift constantly. And competition becomes expensive. So the shoebill evolved toward independence. A predator built not around speed or numbers, but efficiency. Even its flight reflects this trade-off. Despite wingspans exceeding 2.5 meters, shoebills do not appear graceful in the air. Takeoff is laborious. Heavy wing beats forcing the bird upward above the marsh. Its massive beak tilting downward during flight, like excess weight hanging from the skull. But once airborne, the bird transforms, crossing enormous stretches of wetland in silence, gliding above channels inaccessible from the ground. And from this height, the swamp begins to appear less like habitat and more like a labyrinth. Floating vegetation shifting continuously, hidden pools opening and closing with seasonal floods. Entire sections of marsh becoming inaccessible within weeks. A landscape that rewards specialization while punishing everything else. Which may explain why the shoebill appears so evolutionarily isolated. It occupies its own family, Balenicepetidae, a lineage with no close modern equivalent. Its nearest living relatives are believed to be pelicans, yet the resemblance feels almost accidental. Because the shoebill does not merely look prehistoric, it behaves in ways that feel disconnected from modern birds entirely. One of the most striking examples is the stare. Its forward-facing eyes create unusually intense binocular vision for a bird. The shoebill fixes its gaze onto movement with unnerving precision, remaining completely motionless while observing. And throughout evolution, predators have repeatedly developed this same visual behavior. Owls, big cats, crocodilians, species built around depth perception and perfect timing. And in the shoebill, those same predatory mechanics appear concentrated into a creature standing nearly 5 feet tall in black swamp water. The result feels deeply unnatural, as though multiple evolutionary pathways converged into something that should not exist in this form. But perhaps the shoebill's most important adaptation is not physical. It is psychological, because survival inside the swamp requires tolerance for extreme uncertainty. Water levels rise and collapse unpredictably, Prey populations shift with seasonal flooding. Nesting sites vanish beneath storms. And beneath the surface, another danger waits entirely. Crocodiles. Massive Nile crocodiles moving silently through the same waters the shoebill depends upon. For nesting adults, this creates a dangerous balance. Because unlike many large birds that defend colonies collectively, the shoebill often raises its young alone. A single nest constructed from reeds and aquatic vegetation, built low above shallow water, exposed, isolated, vulnerable to flooding, to predators, to collapse. And yet, the greatest threat may come from the shoebills themselves. Most clutches contain more than one chick, usually two, occasionally three. At first, this appears to be a safeguard against environmental instability, a biological insurance policy for unpredictable wetlands. But as the chicks grow, the balance begins to change. Food becomes limited, competition intensifies, and gradually, one chick begins to dominate, stronger, larger, more aggressive. The weaker sibling falls behind, receiving less food, less protection, less access to shade beneath the parent's body, until eventually only one remains. A process known as siblicide, observed in several predatory bird species, but especially stark in shoebills. The surviving chick becomes the parent's primary investment, not cruelty, efficiency. Because inside unstable ecosystems, raising one healthy offspring may be more realistic than risking the survival of all. And the conditions surrounding the nest are unforgiving. Temperatures rise rapidly beneath the equatorial sun. So adult shoebills perform an unusual behavior, rarely associated with giant predatory birds. They collect water inside their enormous beaks and pour it directly over eggs and chicks, cooling them, preventing fatal overheating. A creature that appears almost reptilian in its stillness, suddenly displaying extraordinary parental precision. But even survival into adulthood changes little about the shoebill's existence, because adulthood in the swamp means entering a life dominated by isolation. Days may pass with minimal movement, the shoebill standing silently among reeds while insects move across the water's surface around it. And over time, this behavior began shaping human perception of the species itself. Among local communities, the shoebill has often inspired conflicting reactions. In some regions, it is respected, in others, avoided. Its size, its silence, its direct stare, all contribute to the feeling that the bird does not entirely belong among ordinary wildlife. Even its movements feel strangely calculated. When threatened, shoebills sometimes respond not by fleeing immediately, but by standing motionless, watching. Their eyes locked forward with startling intensity. And when they do move, the transition feels abrupt and unnatural. Stillness exploding into force within seconds, like an ambush predator waiting beneath water. Which may explain why modern footage of shoebills became so unsettling online. Viewers expecting ordinary bird behavior encountered something entirely different. A creature that seemed emotionally unreadable, ancient, almost mechanical in its patience. But the shoebill is not emotionless. Its behavior simply evolved under very different pressures. In dense wetlands, wasted energy becomes dangerous. Constant movement alerts prey. Excess aggression risks injury. Noise travels unpredictably through swamp vegetation. So the shoebill evolved restraint, extreme restraint. And over millions of years, that restraint became its identity. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the shoebill is how narrowly specialized it truly is. Its survival depends on wetlands remaining biologically intact, stable flood cycles, healthy fish populations, dense papyrus ecosystems, the exact environmental conditions that shaped its evolution. And those conditions are becoming increasingly fragile. Across parts of Central Africa, wetlands are shrinking under agricultural expansion, human settlement, drainage projects, and climate instability. Sections of swamp once isolated for centuries are becoming fragmented. Water flow patterns are changing, breeding grounds are disappearing, fish populations are shifting, and highly specialized predators often struggle to adapt quickly to rapid environmental transformation. Because specialization creates efficiency, but it also creates dependence. The shoebill became extraordinarily successful inside one specific world, a world of silence, shallow water, floating vegetation, and hidden prey. But outside that environment, its advantages begin to disappear, which is partly why the bird remains so rare. Wild populations are believed to number only a few thousand individuals, scattered across difficult-to-access wetlands, and even studying them remains challenging. Because the swamp itself resists observation. Dense vegetation obscures movement, water channels shift constantly, visibility collapses beneath fog and humidity. The shoebill survives partly because its world remains difficult for humans to fully enter. Yet, despite this isolation, the bird has become something larger than a biological curiosity. It has become a symbol, not merely of ancient evolution, but of ecosystems that still operate beyond human control. Places where nature remains slow, unpredictable, and deeply indifferent. Because the shoebill does not inspire fear through aggression, it inspires something quieter: recognition. A reminder that evolution does not move toward familiarity, it moves toward survival. And sometimes, survival produces forms so strange that they feel disconnected from the modern world entirely. A 6-foot bird standing motionless in black water. A predator built from patience, eyes fixed forward through layers of mist, waiting for movement beneath the surface. Not rushed, not distracted, perfectly adapted to a world most life struggles to endure. And somewhere tonight, deep within the papyrus swamps of Central Africa, another shoebill still stands alone in silence, listening to water move beneath the reeds, watching, waiting, as it has for millions of years.